The butterfly effect is never really a theory I put much stock into growing up. The idea that a bug coincidentally starting a chain reaction to other events across the world seemed a bit far-fetched. And while this viewpoint on it is a bit literal, funny enough, small changes within our world have affected the biggest show of the year more than once. And frankly, I'm more of a believer in the concept now. I don't know about you, but when I think of WrestleMania, a surge of childhood greatness runs through my mind. From Rey Mysterio climbing the top of the mountain after his untimely friend Eddie Guerrero's passing, to the all-time clinics between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, to I'm sorry, I love you. WrestleMania has turned into a show whose size and importance has lived up to the hype it carries every spring. These moments get even better when our favorite wrestler, a grappler who has captured the hearts of the fans and the world over, finally get their moment in the sun. Sometimes, what the fans want doesn't necessarily go with whatever the front office is planning for that year. Nothing personifies this jadedness in the WWE product more than the build to WrestleMania 30.
How did the perfect storm of an out-of-touch owner, a disgruntled main eventer, and an organic underdog turn this WrestleMania from one of the most criticized ever to one of the best in the event's history? But sometimes, I guess when you have a WrestleMania moment locked and loaded, you just have to say yes.
Fear the Beard.
Like any Royal Rumble, let's go ahead and start with number 1.
I am CM Punk, and I am the voice of the voiceless.
The voice of the voiceless has had plenty of Rumble appearances before this point. A multiple-time world champion, CM Punk has only had 2 accolades elude his WWE career, winning the Royal Rumble and main eventing WrestleMania.
As we would learn later on, this was a massive gripe for Phil Brooks, because last year, to much of his chagrin, even though he was WWE champion for 400 plus days, unheard of at the time, he was pushed aside for John Cena and The Rock to have a repeat of last year's closer. This combined with a mistreated staph infection left Punk feeling dejected and hurt after climbing the mountain of mountains last year.
As the match goes on, man after man enters, and Punk has a little exchange with each one of them, making Punk the Iron Man performer in this year's Rumble. But to add injury to injury in this whole thing, he becomes concussed halfway through. With WWE doctors urging him to be pulled from the match early, he waves them off in order to fulfill his part in the match. So let's go ahead and skip forward to number 28.
Do you honestly think that your heroes are as good as me?
I'm your superhero. I'm the guy you pay to see.
The Animal returned to his old stomping grounds in order to punch his ticket to WrestleMania. He had left the WWE ring in order to pursue the bright lights of Hollywood, and has gotten some pretty notable roles in his short time away from the company. He even has one of his biggest films premiering shortly after WrestleMania 30. I'm forgetting what it's called. It's some weird, unheard of space movie, Outer Space Defenders or something. It'll come to me later.
Well, clearly WWE wanted some cross-brand promotion here, and I guess the former WWE champion is back. But let's go ahead to the number 30 spot. This entrant we've been waiting for all night. You see, when a wrestler has such a natural connection with the crowd, they become extremely hard to ignore, and this was Daniel Bryan.
The Yes chant had taken over popular culture, from WWE to NCAA basketball. Daniel Bryan was known world over from Mexico to Japan, and was a very early staple of Ring of Honor as it started to get off the ground as a promotion. Sadly signing with the company during their abysmal PG era, Daniel Bryan was first seen on a WWE screen as the first season of the game show version of NXT, which had challenges that weren't necessarily within his wheelhouse.
Not to also mention he was part of one of the hottest angles after the show, The Nexus, for about one night. In their debut assault of Monday Night Raw, Bryan would later be fired for choking ring announcer Justin Roberts with his own necktie. Bryan, in his semi-autobiography Yes, recalls not receiving clear instructions and learning that sponsors were not very happy with the move afterwards. Being fired, Danielson returned to the Indies as a superstar, before returning to team with Team WWE at SummerSlam against his former faction.
2013 and 2014, Daniel Bryan was at the top of his game, drawing crowds all over the WWE universe. Which makes total sense for him to come in at number 30, have a challenging rise to the top, and then clean house for... Oh, it's not him, it's Rey Mysterio. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we love Rey, but the boos coming from the crowd at this point aren't necessarily for him specifically. He wasn't even in the match. And it wasn't kind of hard to see what WWE was doing here. Daniel Bryan wasn't necessarily the physical template of what Vince McMahon saw as a WWE superstar, and this began the era of WWE telling us fans, hey, you're gonna like who we want you to like.
The boos continued as fan favorite CM Punk was eliminated third from last, leaving us with the final two of Batista and pre-Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. This was Roman Reigns back in the Shield days, so maybe he's not quite ready, but maybe he'll get it. Batista, actor and part-timer, would go on to win the Royal Rumble in one of the most panned Rumble events in history.
At the end of the night, this event and the road to WrestleMania looked really bleak, but the following night would see a fallout that would change WWE history, wrestling history, and WrestleMania history forever.
Getting punked.
That night, as WWE superstars entered the arena in Cleveland, a bomb would be dropped on WWE management that would see their plans for WrestleMania change entirely. Or should I say, a pipe bomb.
Vince, I need to talk to you. And Hunter was in the room and he goes, oh, I'll leave. And I went, no, you know what? You can stay. I don't care. You need to hear this too.
CM Punk arrived that day to work at the end of his rope, frankly.
And I just looked Vince in the eye and I said, I do not love this anymore. I'm fucking sick. I'm fucking hurt. I'm fucking confused. I don't know as a business what we're doing anymore. Every day you tell me this is a team effort, but every day it's a fucking individual effort by me.
Not only being concussed, Punk had been dealing with an ill-treated staph infection by WWE doctors. And, as the cherry on top, the straight-edge superstar was being pressured about doing a mandatory drug test.
I do not need to wrestle you. You need to wrestle me. I talked openly about bringing back Dave as a babyface, and I was like, how do you not see how that is the worst idea?
Not to mention, he was none too pleased with who he found out was his WrestleMania opponent, Triple H.
I mentioned something about the piss test. Hunter goes, well, you know, Dave just took the same piss test you did. And then I just looked at Hunter and I went, did you? You have creatively stifled me. You have made this a very toxic environment. I no longer want to be here.
After an extremely heated conversation with Vince McMahon and Paul Levesque, CM Punk walked out of WWE and professional wrestling for the better part of a decade. This is the moment the butterfly first flapped its wings.
Elsewhere, the WrestleMania card seemed to be set. Randy Orton was set to face off against Batista for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. John Cena and Bray Wyatt were set to go one-on-one. The Redacted Beast was set to be the next man to try to break the undefeated streak of The Undertaker. None of these plans involved our bearded hero, sadly. But with CM Punk in less than 24 hours becoming a non-factor, the company had to pivot, and fast. With pressure from all sides and over a barrel, with nowhere else to go, WWE decided to relent and give the fans what they wanted all along.
Hi, interjecting ELW Chase variant here. I want to make something very clear. The main event of WrestleMania 30 is my favorite WrestleMania main event of all time. But I do take issue with something that WWE consistently does with this main event that really gets under my skin for some reason. Daniel Bryan was never, and I mean a Chris Jericho-sized, never supposed to be in the main event of this WrestleMania. And normally, I can take WWE's revisionist history with a blood-pressuring, spiking pinch of salt. But for some reason, this just bothers me a lot. Don't get me wrong, I'm so happy to stand here a decade later and be able to say that this Mania main event happened. But the revisionist history here, and for WWE to constantly say, oh, this was the plan all along, really bothers me.
Instead of eating the pin on this one for lack of a better term and saying we had other plans but Bryan is so over and had so much support we couldn't ignore it anymore, sure, why not? I think part of it is Vince McMahon era WWE Island Nation attitude here that comes across as if you haven't done anything here, then you ain't shit type booking. This revisionist history kind of takes away all of Bryan's accomplishments and invalidates them, both inside and outside of the company, while also invalidating WWE's own fan base. But whatever, we're the authority after all, right?
While yes, we love Papa H now for being the wonderful head of creative that he is, at the time all this was going down, he was like a presidential candidate in the back with how much he would politic. And don't get me wrong, the man will give on the grandest stage of them all when it calls for it. Well, besides Booker T, but I digress.
Yes to Triple X. Oh wait, no, pause. The Viper, the Animal, and the King.
Orton versus Batista was the boardroom main event that they wanted, and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were going to see to it by any means that it stayed that way. After a Monday Night Raw segment that saw Bryan and a bunch of fans storm the ring, demanding that he be inserted into the main event, the company could deny it no longer.
So, on the night of nights it was set. The first match on the card would be Triple H versus Daniel Bryan. If Bryan won, he would be added to the main event later on in the night.
What a great battle. Good night, Daniel. The yes movement just died. Not yet. What? Yes. Bryan lands on his feet. Out of the corner. No. No. Daniel Bryan do it. Can he do it? Yes. Yes.
You know, for Triple H and Mania opening matches, this was always going to be a sleeper pick for an all-time list. With Triple H targeting Bryan's shoulder for a majority of the bout, Bryan just barely pulls off the win here. Bruised and battered, Bryan was not only going to be going up against Randy Orton and Batista, but fighting against the whole Authority.
I highly recommend checking out the hype package for this match that is scored by Imagine Dragons' song Monster. When WWE puts their whole sports entertainment into it, they can really build up a match. As Randy Orton and Batista walked to the ring with the grandiosity entrance that you would imagine from a WrestleMania, Daniel Bryan walked to the ring as if he was a wounded dog, being willed by all the yes chants within the Superdome, willing him to go fight for the title that was his.
As both heavyweights thought they had finally dispatched Bryan, he would zoom in with flying knees and yes locks galore. An iconic spot that sticks in the heads of many fans as they thought the American Dragon would be put away for good, a combo Batista bomb and RKO through the announce table.
Batista bomb into an RKO. Batista bomb into an RKO. Oh, God. No.
As the air was sucked out of the arena, everyone thought the yes movement was finally over. Until
Batista looking for the Batista bomb to put Randy Orton away and win the championship. There's the Batista bomb. Daniel Bryan, Daniel Batista, Daniel Batista, Daniel Batista. Yes, lock. Come on, Daniel. Come on, Daniel. Take back Batista. Batista. He did it. He did it. He did it. You gotta be kidding me. The Miracle King. The Miracle King. Miracle on Bourbon Street.
WWE has had many memorable moments, but nothing felt more deserved than Daniel Bryan that night in New Orleans. As Bryan Danielson begins to wind down his full-time in-ring career this year, I'm so happy to be able to talk about this match and see so many classics both in and outside of WWE.
There's something to say here about the spirit of Danielson. No front office, injury, retirement, or company has been able to stop him from being one of the greatest to ever do it. And while I may give the company flack for their revisionist history around the whole situation, it truly is one of the best WrestleMania moments of all time.
On one spring night in the Crescent City, we were all kind of WWE champion that night. And all thanks to the flapping of the wings of a straight edge butterfly. And with a main event this good, how can you not just say yes? This is one of my favorite matches of all time, and Bryan Danielson has just been one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss another deep dive. What do you want me to cover next? Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Until then, this has been Extreme League Wrestling, and we'll catch you next time.